Some disappearances are accompanied by screaming. Others, silence. And silence is worse, especially the kind that hovers like dust in an abandoned hallway. The kind of silence that makes you think your ears have stopped working, even though your heart is still thudding like a trapped moth. That's the kind of silence that was around the Jeffries place. The first time I saw the photo, I was digging through a police auction bin of old evidence, just doing what I do, looking for stories no one wants to tell out loud. Most of the box was junk: rusted handcuffs, waterlogged notebooks, VHS tapes with labels like "Jeffries Do Not Destroy." But then there was the photo, a wide, faded Polaroid, 12 barefoot people standing in front of a gray farmhouse. The kind of gray that isn't even a color anymore, just weather. They all wore the same white tunic, no shoes, no smiles, just standing there lined up by height. 6 kids, 5 adults, and one person in the center I couldn't quite place. A teenager, maybe? Or the oldest child? Hard to tell. The figure's face was slightly blurred, like the lens had shaken or the film had resisted capturing it. The farmhouse had 12 chimneys. I counted. 12, like the people. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you really like what I'm doing here, and tell me where you're listening from and what time it is. I want to know if you're in the dark. Now, turn off the lights, maybe turn on the fan for some soothing noise, and let's get started tonight. The Jeffries were never supposed to be a case. Technically, they weren't missing. They weren't even wanted for anything, at least not officially. No one filed a report when they vanished because no one ever knew they were there in the first place. The farm was near a dying town called Balm Grove, way out past the county line. Population? Less than a bus. It's the kind of town where the post office closes at noon and the diner serves ketchup in washed-out baby food jars. I drove through it last spring. All I saw was one bar with a flickering sign and a woman with a rooster on her shoulder. Not joking. The Jeffries farm sits about 8 miles out from town, beyond a rusted gate with a sign that just reads "No access. Breathe pure." Underneath that, in smaller letters, "Return to Harmony or turn back." Creepy? Sure. But no one around seemed to think it was weird. One man at the gas station told me, "That place just minds its business." When I asked if anyone still lived there, he squinted at me and said, "Ain't my business to know." Here's the thing that really gets under my skin. No one knows how long they were there. Tax records show the land went unclaimed from 1974 until 2005. No purchases, no sales, no official documents. It just existed. People say there were lights in the upstairs window sometimes. People say they'd see smoke coming out of the chimneys in winter. But nobody ever saw anyone go in or out, except one person. A teenage girl, who I'll call Annie, told me her dad used to do HVAC repair, and one summer he got a call to check a broken fan motor out that way. She said he never came home. That was in 1996. The police never traced the call. The house was locked tight when they arrived, and no sign of anyone. No footprints, nothing. But Annie said he left the house saying, "Some farm girl called, said she couldn't breathe." Now here's the goosebump part. In the photo I found, one of the barefoot kids, third from the right, is holding something in her hands. At first I thought it was a stuffed animal, but when I zoomed in, I realized it was a fan motor, the exact part Annie described. The Jeffries didn't leave much behind. No family, no social security numbers, no records at the hospital. But the photo had something written on the back in faded blue pen. It read, "The last of the clean days, before the harvest, before she broke the rule." No context, no signature. There's a theory online, mostly from obscure paranormal blogs and one very angry Reddit thread, that the Jeffries weren't a family at all, that they were something else. A religious group, maybe. A hidden commune. But the weird part is, nobody seems to agree on what they believed. Some say they were sun worshippers. Others say they feared light entirely and slept underground. One woman claims she used to be part of the Harmony House and left after she was forced to sit in the silence box. Whatever that means. But here's the strangest thing I've found so far. The house in the picture? It doesn't exist anymore. I drove out there. I found the property. There's a flat foundation and a field of scrub grass. The 12 chimneys? They're still there, still standing in a perfect line like little brick tombstones. But no house, no rubble, nothing but footprints, 12 of them, circling the photo's location, not fresh but deep, like someone had been pacing. And next to one chimney, I found something buried under a pile of stones. A child's tunic, white, cotton, torn at the collar, smelled faintly of bleach and smoke. So that's where we start, a photo nobody remembers taking, a family nobody remembers meeting, and a house that stood for decades without leaving any paperwork. The deeper I go into this, the more I realize they didn't disappear all at once. It happened slowly, quietly, a piece at a time, and someone or something was keeping track. The first body wasn't human. I should probably start there because if I ease you into it, you might think I'm exaggerating or that I'm trying to be dramatic for the views. I'm not. I didn't believe it at first either. The thing they found, well, what they said they found was buried in a field about 2 miles behind the Jeffries chimney line, near the edge of an old irrigation ditch. This field was technically county land, which is the only reason anyone ever looked there at all. A social worker went missing while doing a welfare check in a nearby foster home, and for reasons I still don't understand, they pinged her phone near the Jeffries place. No one knew why she was out there. Her assignment that day was in the opposite direction. She wasn't supposed to be anywhere near Balm Grove. And yet, her last text was to her supervisor. It read, "Entering Harmony. Tell my niece I'm okay." Harmony isn't on the map. Not anymore. It hasn't been since the 1950s when it lost its township status, but locals still use the name. It referred to the stretch of land surrounding the Jeffries property back when it was a failed farming co-op and some kind of spiritual retreat. Back when things were just weird, not what they became. When deputies searched the area, they found her car on a logging path, unlocked, keys still in the ignition. In the back seat was a grocery tote containing infant formula, powdered milk, and surgical gloves. Nothing else. Her phone was never recovered. That was the official report. But what didn't make it into the press was what the cadaver dogs hit on. See, in the tall grass at the back of that field near the tree line, the dogs stopped. Not just one of them, all three, and they started crying. Not barking, crying. That's something you hear handlers talk about sometimes when a dog detects something they shouldn't be detecting, like something dead but wrong dead. The way one handler put it, not death like a body, death like a basement. They started digging and found a shallow depression, not quite a grave, not quite a hole, just enough to hide something, and buried beneath maybe 6 inches of dirt wrapped in a white woolen cloth was the thing I mentioned before. Not a person. Not exactly. It was a mannequin, except not plastic, not wooden. This is going to sound insane, but it was fleshy. The surface had the texture of tanned leather, but it didn't move like leather. Too soft. Inside, when they cut it open, and yes, they did, it was filled with cotton, hair, and bones, small animal bones, birds, squirrels, rodents, arranged in the shape of a human skeleton. The face had glass eyes, one brown, one blue. It had ears that looked too human. And between the legs it had been sewn shut, no anatomical features at all. Just a seam, like it had been made to resemble a child without being a child, a placeholder, a proxy, a body but not. No one wanted to claim it. The State Forensics Lab refused to test the materials. Officially, the report labeled it decorative effigy, origin unclear. But the social worker's case was closed shortly after that discovery, just filed away. Her name quietly removed from the missing persons register a year later, as if finding that explained everything. But it didn't explain the room. See, right after the effigy was found, the state police decided to do a full sweep of the Jeffries land. Not just the house, or what was left of it, but the surrounding acreage, old barns, cellars, irrigation ditches, and that's when they found it. Beneath one of the chimneys, there was a slab of concrete that looked different from the others, less weathered, less real. When they pried it up, they discovered a trapdoor. And under that trapdoor, a room, small, maybe 8 by 8 feet, no windows, no furniture, just a single mattress on the floor, stained yellow in the center, and a rope affixed to a metal loop in the ceiling. It looked like it had been used as a tether. There were scratch marks on the floorboards, deep ones, going in circles, but no signs of who had been kept there, or what. No fingerprints, no blood, just a song lyric, carved into the wall over and over with a nail. Only the clean will rise. Only the clean will rise. Here's where it gets strange again. The rope was attached to a heavy wooden collar, like a livestock yoke, except smaller, child-sized. The mattress had no sheets, no pillow, but the air, according to the report, the air inside that room was warm, not stale, not cold, warm, like someone had just been there. One of the deputies on that search, a guy named Tavin, told me something off the record. He said he swore he heard a voice while they were in the basement. A girl's voice, very faint, singing in rhythm with the rope's creak as it swayed back and forth. Wool and water, bleach and bone, bring the body, take the tone. That's when I realized something I hadn't noticed in the photo before. Remember how I said there were 12 people? 6 kids, 5 adults, and 1 figure in the middle? The figure in the middle wasn't wearing shoes, but they also weren't standing. Everyone else was planted firmly on the ground, feet aligned, eyes forward. This figure was hanging, suspended just slightly above the earth, their toes pointed down but not touching. Arms at their side, heads slightly tilted, like a doll someone had held up for a photograph. And I swear to you, if you look close enough at the chimney behind them, you'll see the outline of the trapdoor, the chimney that hides the room with the rope, and just maybe the body that wasn't. By now, you're probably asking the same question I was. Where were the authorities? Where was child protection? If a family lived out in the woods for decades, hiding effigies in the ground and tethering someone in a chimney cellar, shouldn't someone have noticed? Well, someone did. But she was 15, and no one believed her. Her name was Harper Mitchell, and her story was buried under a stack of dismissed CPS reports from 1998. I found her name while reviewing a batch of archived intake forms, mostly false alarms, neighbor disputes, or garden variety weirdness. But Harper's file was different. It didn't come from an adult. It came from a school guidance counselor in a nearby district, the only one within 50 miles that serviced homeschooled kids part-time. She said Harper showed up mid-year with no prior records. Just a note, handwritten and unsigned, stating she was under the care of the Jeffries spiritual household. No phone number, no address, no emergency contact. For 3 weeks, Harper attended a special transitional program. She sat in the back of class, never spoke unless asked. But what freaked the teachers out was the way she communicated when she did speak. She talked in numbers. Not all the time, just when startled or stressed. If a fire alarm rang, she'd cover her ears and start whispering what sounded like arithmetic. 14 by 3, then 12. 14 by 3, then 12. A teacher once asked her if she'd been hurt at home. She said, "I broke Rule 14. That's why I can't eat yellow things anymore." There were no rules in the school numbered 14. The counselor who submitted the report wrote that Harper had suspicious scarring on her forearms resembling tally marks. Medical examination was declined. Harper said she would lose her clean rating if anyone else looked inside her. Her wording, not mine. Eventually, she had an episode in the lunchroom. Another student accidentally touched her tray and Harper bit him, hard enough to draw blood. When the teacher pulled her off, she screamed, "He saw my margin. He looked outside the borders," which, yeah, not a phrase you forget. After that, the school called whatever contact number they had for the Jeffries. A woman answered and calmly said, "Harper has been rejected by Harmony. Please release her back to us." That same night, Harper was withdrawn. Someone picked her up after dark. The security camera was out. Witnesses say they saw a pale woman in white driving an old van with no plates. Harper was never seen again. The report was filed, stamped, and apparently dismissed. The counselor later claimed the sheriff told her it was none of the county's concern. But here's the kicker. Someone tried to alter the paperwork afterward. Scribbled corrections appeared in pen over the margins. They changed the name from Harper Mitchell to Hannah Jessup. The signature was smudged, dates mismatched, but the handwriting was the same as the note on the photo I found, remember? Well, she broke the rule. There are online theories, wild ones, that Harper wasn't just one of the Jeffries kids. Some think she was actually the daughter of the central figure, the one blurred in the photo, the one I said didn't quite look alive. Here's why they think that. Buried in a comment thread on a now defunct true crime forum, someone uploaded a photo, a blurry screenshot from an old news clip showing kids from a rural talent show in 1995. There in the back row is a girl who looks exactly like Harper, and standing next to her, a teenager. Taller, older, smiling in a strange, forced way. Both are wearing tunics. A user named Shamara Red 13 commented below, "The one on the left broke Rule 14. The one on the right became the 13th. Nobody replied. The forum went offline 2 days later, all threads scrubbed. Here's what I've pieced together from the Rule 14 stuff. In a battered spiral notebook found in the ruins of the house, yes, I may have trespassed, I found a list of hand-copied house guidelines. Most of them were benign cult speak. You know, stuff like Rule 4, the air beyond the line is chaos. Rule 6, food must be chewed exactly 33 times. Rule 11, no touching above the elbow after dark. But Rule 14, clean children do not speak to outsiders. I found it underlined with a small stain next to it. Maybe ink. Maybe not. And beneath it, in smaller writing, talking brings the blurring. The blurring brings the wall. Look, I know what it sounds like. Made-up cult nonsense. But tell me why, then, that phrase, the blurring brings the wall, was also found scratched into the underside of a school desk in Harper's classroom? I checked. I found it. Same handwriting. And remember the kid who Harper bit? He's in a psych facility now. He's 28, nonverbal, and hasn't drawn anything except lines. 13 vertical ones, always in rows of 12, with the 13th bent or fading away. When asked why he draws them, he whispers, only 12 stay. One forgets to breathe. The scariest part, he's not the only one who draws that. Last week I found the same symbol, 12 lines and a fading 13th, scrawled in chalk behind the silo door, which we haven't even talked about yet. That comes later. But remember Harper. She tried to leave, she tried to warn someone, and for a moment, just for a few short weeks, she lived outside the margins, and then Rule 14 pulled her back in. You ever hear of someone vanishing twice? It sounds like something a magician might brag about. But this isn't a stage trick. This is the part of the story where things slip sideways, where the edges get fuzzy, and your sense of time starts to feel off. You'll want to keep track of names and dates from here on out. Trust me, the woman's name was Carla Wynn. On paper, she was listed as a sister-in-law to one of the original Jeffries adults. According to what little I could scrape together, Carla was a high school dropout who got caught up in the tail end of a spiritual revival movement in the 1980s. Think white robes, food restriction, and duct-taped Bibles. Carla married into the Jeffries household around 1989. Not legally, as far as the state could prove. But there was a diary entry found much later in a burned field box, referring to Brother Nathaniel's third binding with Carla, sealed under the 12th moon. Romantic, right? Here's what makes Carla interesting. In 1994, she tried to leave. That alone isn't weird. Cult escape stories are more common than you'd think, usually tragic, sometimes heroic, always messy. But Carla didn't just run. She walked to a police station barefoot, carrying a shoebox with 3 things inside. 1, a strip of white cloth stained with iodine. 2, a cassette tape labeled, "Do Not Listen After Dark." 3, a torn-out page from a ledger titled Cleanliness Audit Children 1993. The tape's gone now. Destroyed in an evidence room fire 3 months later. You catching the pattern yet? But the cloth and the ledger page, they survived. The ledger page is what got my attention. It listed 13 names. 12 were crossed out in red. One was circled in blue. Next to each name were words like sufficient, soiled, pending, or just 0%. Next to the circled name, Margaret exceeded C root cellar. Remember that. We'll get back to it. Carla was put into protective custody. A county caseworker tried to place her in a motel until housing became available, but on the second night, Carla slipped out through the bathroom window. Gone. Vanished. No note. No money. Just gone. She wasn't seen again until 2012. 18 years later, police in a different state found a woman matching Carla's description wandering barefoot along a service road outside Boone, North Carolina. She was underweight, sunburned, dehydrated, and completely silent. No ID, no memory, but she had the same tattoos as mentioned in the 1994 report. And yeah, those tattoos were not your standard ink. They were biblical verses, but not from any version I recognized. One said, "And he shall divide the clean from the outside and mark the once breathed with ash." Another just read, "Do not speak the wall." Her fingerprints matched. The photo was unmistakable. Carla Wynn, missing since '94, found in 2012, and then gone again. A week after she was found, Carla was placed in a temporary psych facility. On the fourth night, during shift change, she vanished. No cameras caught her leaving. Her room was locked from the inside. The window wasn't opened. The only thing missing, besides her, a single pillowcase. I know, you're thinking she faked it, but here's the thing. The facility was underground. No exits except a stairwell and an elevator. The elevator had no log of movement after 10:12 p.m. And this is the part I haven't told anyone yet, not on the channel, not online. I found something. In a sealed archive box marked Fugitive Closed Case Carla W., there was a Polaroid tucked behind a rusted paperclip. It had no timestamp, no markings, but I swear to you, it's her. Same vacant expression, same ash-smudged fingers. She's standing in a tunnel. Behind her, chalk drawings, 13 lines. The 13th again, fading. And scrawled in jagged writing, "I broke the rule. I brought the wall." So what happened to her? Some think she was reabsorbed into the Jeffries group, pulled back like Harper had been. Others believe she never really left, that her first escape was a test, part of some ritual to see if she'd survive the outside. There's a theory that Harmony branded certain members as repeaters, souls who tried to flee but couldn't stay clean on the other side. If that sounds ridiculous, I get it. But here's one more thing. You remember that burned field box I mentioned? The one with diary entries? One entry was signed CW, dated May 1993, a year before her supposed escape. It read, "I think Margaret is speaking backwards again. She whispers to the vent at night, says the chimneys hum louder when she cries. They say she's been marked. They say she saw a car once. I think she's me." That entry was the last in the diary. The next page was missing. And taped to the back cover, a clipping. A newspaper obituary with no photo, just a single line. Carla Wynn survived by no one, dated 1994, a full week before she walked barefoot into the police station. So ask yourself, how do you vanish once? And who comes back the second time? I didn't believe in cult doctrine until I held one in my hands. It wasn't a printed book, no cover, no ISBN, no publisher's logo. Just a bundle of pages, crudely sewn together with dental floss, bound in a cracked plastic report sleeve. The front page simply read, "The Jeffries Doctrine of Harmonic Penance, preserved by hand. Spoken for the pure." I found it in a milk crate, buried under chicken wire in the back of a burnt-out tool shed, or at least what was once a tool shed. Half the roof had caved in, and the floor was more ash than wood. The crate was hidden beneath an overturned metal basin. No dust, no burn damage, like someone had recently placed it there, or maybe someone had never stopped guarding it. The manuscript was written in red ink, not printed, handwritten, tight script, repetitive, nearly compulsive. Over 70 pages, all filled with the same mechanical rhythm, like the person writing it wasn't allowed to pause. I'll read you the opening lines and tell me you don't get the chills. Open quote, "Cleanliness is the way. Dirt is the dream. Light invites the rot. The outside spoils the margins. We were not made for the air. Close quote. They believed that breathing unfiltered free air led to soul decay. That's why the Jeffreys were never seen in town, because going into populated areas meant exposure to dirty air, which they believed stained the body in a way soap couldn't touch. Hence, harmonic penance. Every exposure had to be atoned for through rhythmic discipline, rocking, scraping, reciting, sometimes fasting. The more exposure, the harsher the discipline. You could feel it in the text, like the person writing it had already been punished for stopping too long, like the words themselves were bleeding. And about halfway through, there's a passage describing the doctrine of quiet separation, a practice meant for non-compliant offspring or fractured thought adolescents. The procedure? Isolation in an underground space, silence, starvation of the voice, no eye contact, and a forced repetition of the core equation. Open quote, 12 by 1 is 12. 12 less 1 is void. Close quote. Again and again, pages of it. There's a theory, shared quietly among trauma psychologists, that certain cults invent numerical systems to replace morality. The Jeffreys, they used it like a math problem you could never solve correctly. 12 by 1 is family. 12 less 1 is heresy. 13 is the enemy. 11 is the end. And it goes deeper. They believe that sound could cleanse. That's where the term harmonic penance gets literal. Chanting, humming, vibrational washing. Some pages included crude musical notations, circles and scratches resembling Gregorian-like arrangements, but written in an invented scale. Notes labeled not with letters, but with words like hush, choke, rise, bleed. I brought the manuscript to a friend of mine, composer, choir director, the whole deal. She studied it and said something that still haunts me. Open quote, "This isn't music. This is a suppression score." Close quote. When I asked what that meant, she said the spacing and shape suggested the removal of voice, like instructing a group not to sing but to simulate singing, to imitate it without producing tone. Hollow chanting, sound without breath. Now, this isn't just creepy. It's strategic. That kind of vocal suppression can lead to dizziness, oxygen deprivation, and, if prolonged, hallucinations. Combine that with fasting, darkness, and sensory control, you've got a potent brew of total dependency. Cult 101. 2 of the pages in the back were missing, torn, not cleanly removed. You could see the perforated stubs where they used to be. The last full page? A warning. Just one sentence, bolded in heavy ink. Do not breathe from the 11th. That phrase turned up again in a deputy's report from 2007, scrawled on a concrete wall in the silo tunnel. We'll get to the silo soon. Don't worry. The book also included what they called the 14 Rules for Purity. Not all of them were legible. Some pages were water damaged, but I managed to reconstruct most. 1, no breath before the cleansing sun. 2, no footfall beyond the 12th ring. 3, no name spoken after dark. 4, no question asked during silence. No light from the left side. 6, no food with a shadow. 7, no red on skin. 8, no numbers above 12. No mirrors underground. 10, no contact with the fallen. 11, no use of outside air. 12, no crying above the mattress. 13, no return once the skin forgets. 14, no speaking to the unnumbered. That last one, yeah, that's the kind of phrase that keeps me up at night. Who or what were the unnumbered? There's debate about that. Some believe it refers to children born outside the family lineage. Others think it's about those who wandered in and weren't supposed to exist in their system, the ones who weren't in the ledgers. A third theory? The unnumbered are those who left and came back. Remember Carla? She would have been unnumbered. The punishment for interacting with them? Exposure. Full. Breath unguarded. Let the rod enter. Here's the strangest thing. At the bottom of the doctrine's final page, someone had scribbled a message in blue ballpoint ink, clearly not the same red ink as the rest. Different pen, different hand. It read, Margaret passed the line. Margaret broke 14. Margaret let the numberless see her mouth move. Margaret again. Every time I think this family couldn't get more unsettling, another little girl's name shows up like a whisper from the floorboards. There's one final thing. Inside the back cover, tucked in with the missing pages, was a dried leaf. Perfectly preserved, it looked waxed or laminated, except it was brittle as parchment. When I touched it, it crumbled into powder. It was basil. Not uncommon. But to the Jeffreys, basil meant something else entirely, a cleansing herb, used only in ritual burn offerings. You don't offer herbs unless there's something to burn. And I don't think they were cooking dinner. You don't really expect a man with a clipboard to vanish. The Census Bureau doesn't send out spies or ghost hunters. They send out retirees, college students, and bored town clerks looking to pad their income. But in the year 2000, the man who knocked on the Jeffreys' door for the federal census didn't come back. His name was Peter Renfro, 57 years old, former algebra teacher, widower, lived with his sister on a small horse farm 20 minutes outside the Jeffreys property line. He'd taken the job because, in his words, I needed to remember how to talk to people again. His last recorded location was on the dirt access road that leads to what's now the charred edge of the Jeffreys property. His car was found a day later, engine running, door wide open, clipboard in the passenger seat. The census forms were blank, except for a single scribbled note on the margin of page 1. 12 total? Unsure. Girl in chimney? Yes. Girl in chimney. That was never explained. Peter Renfro left a voicemail, too. It was recovered weeks later from the Census Bureau's internal line. A technician in D.C. flagged it for follow-up, but by then the local office had closed the file. I heard the recording. First, wind, then tires crunching on gravel, then silence for a long time, like he'd parked and wasn't sure whether to get out. Then faintly, open quote, you folks need to be counted, close quote, muffled, like he was talking through glass. Then came breathing, labored, unsteady. He whispered something unintelligible, but then the audio shifted, a sound like humming, not the cheerful kind, no tune, just one long, steady vocal tone. Almost like a generator warming up, it rose in pitch, then stopped suddenly, and the call ended with a click. The Bureau marked him unresolved, presumed fatal misadventure. No evidence of struggle, no recovery, just a running car, a scribbled note, and one strange piece of audio. His sister Evelyn hired a private investigator, paid with her pension and a GoFundMe that barely reached $400. That investigator lasted 3 days. On the 4th day, Evelyn found a padded envelope on her porch. No return address. Inside, Peter's glasses neatly folded, and a single photo of a dark room, stone walls, no windows, and a shape in the corner that could have been a mattress. Written on the back in thin red marker, he heard the sound. You weren't meant to. Yeah, I know. And here's where it gets weirder. In a 2003 fire inspection of the farmhouse ruins, a structural engineer made a casual remark in the margins of her report. Said she'd found a strange depression in the soil beneath the east side foundation. Not a basement, more like a vertical chute. She described it as brick-lined, unnaturally smooth, acoustically peculiar. She dropped a tape measure into it. It unspooled to nearly 22 feet before hitting what she believed was a metal plate. No follow-up was done. The fire was ruled accidental, but that chute, it might explain the hum. There's a theory among architectural psychologists, yes, that's a real thing, that underground spaces, particularly cylindrical ones, can generate what's called infrasound, frequencies below the range of human hearing, but still felt by the body. Infrasound has been linked to unease, nausea, and intense feelings of dread. Think about it. Renfro hears the hum, freezes, doesn't know what's happening, feels fear, confusion, maybe even hallucination, leaves the car running, walks toward the sound, and then nothing. The hum isn't just creepy. It's tactical. It's an alarm bell in a key only the family could understand. A few years after Renfro's disappearance, a college student named Marissa Bennett visited the ruins as part of her thesis on abandoned homesteads. She posted her photos online, black and white Polaroids of cracked window panes, ash-covered flooring, scorched furniture. But one photo got pulled down. It showed a metal ring in the dirt, like the edge of a trapdoor. People zoomed in, enhanced it, lightened the contrast, and saw what looked like scratch marks around the ring. circular patterns, almost like fingernails. One user commented, open quote, looks like something was trying to close it from the outside. Close. Another replied, open quote, or open it from below. Close quote. But by the time local officials went out there again, the ring was gone, covered with loose soil. And the student, Marissa, she dropped out the same semester. Her thesis was never submitted. So if you're keeping track, one census man vanished, one basement chute found, one hum that turns up in voicemail and later field reports, a farmhouse with no basement, but perhaps more below. Here's the part that really bends the mind. 2 months after Renfro disappeared, a local boy named Calvin Horn, age 10, went missing on a hike near the perimeter of the property. The search turned up nothing but a crumpled lunchbox and Calvin's handheld radio. Guess what was on the radio when they found it? That same humming. Low, constant, vibrating like it was stuck between frequencies. And the model? It had no recording function. Someone was broadcasting that sound, maybe from below, maybe from the chute. There's an academic theory floating around in fringe ethnography circles that some isolated families create acoustic territories, spaces defined not by fences or walls, but by patterns of noise. Chimes, hums, rhythms. The Jeffreys weren't isolating to escape the world. They were tuning it. And Renfro, he was just the first outsider in decades to step inside the song. By now, I thought I'd seen everything this case could throw at me. But then I found the barn. It was buried on a back plot of the property, about a quarter-mile from the main ruins. The access path wasn't listed on any of the county surveyor maps. No tire tracks, no markers. Just a trail of old stone fence posts leaning in like crooked teeth, half swallowed by the brush. The barn had collapsed inward like something had sucked the center straight down. From above, it would have looked like a crater, a black hole with splinters. I didn't notice the hatch until I stepped through what used to be the west wall, a square of metal embedded in concrete, sealed shut with 9 rusted bolts and covered by an iron grate. The grate was newer than the barn, cleaner, painted a pale gray. Not something the original Jeffreys would have built. I pried it open. Beneath the hatch, a spiral staircase descended into total dark. The air that came out smelled wrong. Not rotten, not foul, just empty. Like everything down there had been wiped clean of time. I went down 9 steps before I stopped. 9 because that's where the echoes stopped. Every footstep until then bounced back up at me. After the 9th, nothing. Just that dead, unnatural quiet. I lit my headlamp and stepped down 3 more. There was a door. Heavy, wood planks bound in iron, a metal loop for a lock, but no lock in sight. On the door, written in black ash, were the words 12 less 2, do not name. I took a photo. The flash revealed faint impressions in the dust, bare footprints. Small ones, children's, some going in, some circling, none coming out. Behind the door, something moved. Not footsteps, not voice shifting, like cloth being dragged over concrete, like someone turning slowly in place. I didn't open it. Call me a coward. Fine. But I know what silence like that means. That wasn't stillness. That was listening. I backed up the stairs one at a time and replaced the grate. Later that night, I listened again to that voicemail from Peter Renfro, slowed it down, filtered the background. That humming, it's not just a tone. There's language in it. Not words exactly, but rhythm. Cadence, almost like a chant beneath the hum, too slow for the human ear to process at normal speed. But when you stretch it, you start to hear things. One fragment, repeated every 8 seconds. Open quote, 2 by 6 is family, 2 from 6 is silence. Close quote. Numbers again, always the numbers. Now here's the real punch. In 2012, a hiker named Leora Brinks posted a strange story on a now defunct blog. She'd been exploring abandoned structures around the county, documenting graffiti and writing about urban decay. On one trip, she stumbled on an outbuilding with a rusted sign over the door that read, House of Mercy, Annex. She thought it was some kind of old church, went inside, found a single room with concrete walls and, this is important, 12 beds. All narrow, all nailed to the ground, no blankets, just slabs. The weirdest part, on the wall, scrawled above each bed, was a word. She remembered 9 of them before the blog was taken down. Open quote, calm, flicker, spine, march, 12, red, nest, bite, silence, close quote. She took a photo of 12. That's the one she said felt wrong, like the word itself vibrated. The photo showed a perfectly blank wall, as if the word had vanished or had never been there at all. 2 months later, her body was found in the drainage ditch of a neighboring town. No signs of trauma, no drugs. Her journal was missing. The case went nowhere. In her final blog post, archived by a single Reddit user before the site was scrubbed, she wrote, open quote, something down there speaks in the shape of people. Close quote. I don't know what that means. I don't think I want to. But here's where everything converges. The barn, the hatch, the lost children, the unnamed girl in the census note, the House of Mercy annex, the suppressed chanting, the infrasound, the doctrine, all of it points to one thing. They didn't just isolate to escape. They isolated to contain, and whatever they were containing might still be listening. There's something particularly cruel about discovering proof when it's too late to use it. I don't know how the flash drive ended up in the cardboard box of fire-damaged records I found in the county archives basement. Maybe a clerk slipped it in as a joke. Maybe someone wanted me to find it. It had no label, just a strip of blue painter's tape with JM written in faded Sharpie. Inside were 15 audio files, numbered, no metadata, just titles like Room 1, Calm, and Room 4, March. You recognize those? They match the words above the beds in Leora's blog post. I shouldn't have listened to them at night. That was a mistake. Each recording starts with 20 seconds of silence, then the hum, then something else layered in, indistinct at first. Room 2, flicker, was just static. Room 8, bite, made me physically flinch. There was a sound like something chewing, slow, wet, too close to the mic. But room 12? Room 12 was different. That one wasn't audio, it was a video. Low resolution, black and white, time-stamped September 17th, 1998. The night the fire supposedly consumed the Jeffries house. It shows a small, concrete room. One camera in the top corner, unmoving. The walls are marked with handprints. There are no windows, no doors visible in frame. And in the center, tied to a chair with her back to the camera, is a girl. Not a woman. Not a child. Somewhere in between. Her head is shaved and her spine arches like she's either laughing or about to snap in half. She's humming, but it's not a hum. It's the hum, the one from Renfro's voicemail, the same one that played on Calvin Horn's radio. It loops, modulates, then stops. For 10 full seconds, she sits still. Then she turns toward the camera, slowly, with her head first. Her face is blurred. Not pixelated, not censored, just blurred, like the camera was rejecting her outline. Every time she moves, there's a flicker, like old VHS distortion. At 2:03, she opens her mouth wide, too wide, and no sound comes out. The video glitches, the timestamp warps, and for 5 frames, barely a blink, you see the walls behind her covered in faces. Dozens of them, all wide-eyed, some smiling, some not. All looking at the camera, and then the footage cuts to black. No credits, no end tone, just the file name again. Room 12, silence. I shut my laptop. Left the room. Took a walk around the block just to stop shaking. And still, I went back the next day, because that's what this place does to you. It doesn't just want to be understood, it demands it. So I started making a list, cross-referencing names from old birth records, school enrollments, county utility bills, any public trace of the Jeffries family and their extended relatives. You want to guess what I found? By 1995, the Jeffries family reported 12 residents on the property, 7 adults, 5 children. But in the months leading up to the fire, several documents, medical records, mostly, start listing 10 names instead. No explanation, no obituaries, no death certificates, just the quiet subtraction of 2 people. And then I found Jeremiah. The name showed up in a ledger from a nearby hospital, St. Halloran's. The note read, open quote, Jeremiah M., minor, transferred to in-house long-term observation. Nonverbal, requires acoustic isolation. Close quote, that was dated 4 months before the fire. I found one more note attached to his file, open quote, release denied. Due to phenomenon exhibited during trauma interviews, child has been classified as special designation. See protocol HEMC. Close quote. There is no such protocol in the public index. But here's the kicker. That document was filed by Dr. Winslow M. Renfro, Peter Renfro's brother, a psychiatrist, retired in 1999 after an unspecified personal loss. He died 3 years later. His obituary lists no children, but it does list one surviving niece. Her name? Marissa Bennett, the hiker, the blogger, the girl who found the 12-bedroom and died in a drainage ditch. Tell me that's coincidence. I dare you. Because what I see is a circle, a closed system of watchers and witnesses and silences. And every time someone outside the family came too close, they disappeared. It's like the hum marks them, calls them back in. One of the more unhinged but fascinating papers I came across during all this was from a Scandinavian ethnomusicologist who proposed that certain remote families develop sonic customs, ritual uses of specific sounds to induce altered states, sleep, compliance, collective memory loss. She claimed entire lineages could be trained from infancy to resonate in the same acoustic language. What if the Jeffries children weren't homeschooled in arithmetic and literature? What if they were taught to listen, to emit, to manipulate silence? One part of the paper stuck with me. She wrote, open quote, "In some fringe communities, sound replaces names. A person becomes the tone they produce. To speak that tone aloud, out of sequence, is considered heresy. Dangerous." Close quote. 12-2, do not name. Maybe they weren't names above those beds. Maybe they were tones, frequencies, codes. Maybe room 12 wasn't a punishment. It was a performance. And that girl in the chair? She wasn't screaming. She was broadcasting. I've started hearing it at night. Not the full hum, just the edges of it, like it's stuck between frequencies on an old FM dial, hovering in the static, waiting for me to tune in. At first, I thought it was power lines outside, then tinnitus, then stress. But stress doesn't follow you room to room. It doesn't get louder when you say certain names out loud. It doesn't shift pitch when you walk past a mirror. Last Tuesday, I set up 3 recorders in my apartment, no windows open, no AC, just me in the living room, quietly reading. When I played the audio back, something showed up around the 37-minute mark. A low tone, nearly imperceptible, and then, very faint, a child's voice whispering the same word 3 times. Nest, nest, nest. I hadn't spoken that word since part 9. I hadn't thought it, but it was in the file name, room 7. I checked the waveform. The voice wasn't overlaid like a speaker. It was in the room. Same acoustic signature as my coughs, page turns, distant fridge hum. It came from right behind me. And that's when I decided I needed help. I reached out to someone I hadn't talked to in years, Dr. Mallory Reed, a sound psychologist who worked with acoustic trauma survivors. She'd written a paper in 2016 on resonance paranoia, the idea that certain frequencies could retrain the brain to expect patterns even where none exist. I didn't give her all the details, just sent a clip of the hum and asked if it triggered anything clinically. She responded within an hour. Her reply was just 3 words, open quote, "Where did you?" Close quote. Then she blocked me. No follow-up. No explanation. Blocked. That's when I realized this isn't paranoia anymore. It's pattern. And pattern wants repetition. So I went back to the Jeffries land. Against every better instinct, I returned to the barn, the hatch, the spiral staircase. But this time, I didn't go alone. I brought a field recorder, EMF reader, and 2 cameras, and I brought a mirror. Don't ask why. I just had a hunch. Maybe something about what was reflected could show what wasn't visible directly. It sounds ridiculous now, but at the time, it felt like the only tool I hadn't tried. The hatch was still unlocked. The metal was colder than it should have been for mid-afternoon in July. As I descended, the hum started, not from a speaker, but from me. Like my ribs were vibrating with it. I held up the mirror, nothing behind me. But when I reached the 9th step, something passed behind the reflection. Not in the mirror, inside the reflection. Like another version of the stairwell running parallel. Something darker, slightly off. The walls had symbols etched into them. My twin in the reflection had its eyes closed, mouth open. I dropped the mirror. It didn't break. It just rolled and settled face down. That's when the EMF reader spiked, up to red, and the recorder failed. Both cameras cut to black, and the silence returned. I backed out of there without looking down the rest of the staircase. I didn't want to see the door again, or worse, see it open. Outside, I found something new. Footprints. Dozens of them. Bare, child-sized, leading in a perfect circle around the barn ruins, some overlapping, some stopping mid-stride, as if the person just vanished. I took photos, uploaded one to a private server, but when I tried to email them, the file name kept auto-correcting itself to room 0 begin, room 0. What if it all starts before the first tone? What if the hum isn't a message but an invitation? This isn't just a family gone wrong. It's not some rural cult or forgotten commune. It's a design. A structure built in silence out of silence, fed by silence. The census error wasn't an error. The voicemails weren't glitches. The people who went missing weren't lost. They were heard. And somewhere beneath all of this is a room with no doors, no windows, no numbers, only a chair, and a girl who looks straight through you. Earlier today, I found an envelope slipped under my apartment door. No postage, no return address. Inside was a single Polaroid photo. Grainy, black and white. It shows a child standing in a doorway. Their eyes are whited out like old photographs where the flash burns detail. The back is labeled in shaky pencil, "Don't say her name. You tell me. Tell me what to do with that. Because I think if I speak it, even think it, she'll know I'm listening again." And that's all she needs, just one moment of attention, one crack in the noise, one person to hear her. And then maybe she won't have to hum anymore. She'll just answer. When I was a kid, I used to play this dumb game before bed. I'd stare into the dark corner of my room and try to convince myself that if I looked just a second longer, I'd see something, someone, move. You know, the kind of kid game that starts with, "What if there's a monster?" and ends with you sleeping under the covers for 3 summers straight. I've started seeing corners like that again. Not just in my apartment either. Reflections, shadows, muted corners of audio files. They shift just a little, enough to make you freeze, enough to make you listen. The humming's back, stronger now. It's not a sound anymore. It's a shape. I think it's following me, or maybe I'm following it. The day after the Polaroid, my fire alarm went off at exactly 3:12 a.m. No smoke, no heat, just a single high-pitched beep and the smell of lavender and old concrete, the smell from the Jeffries barn. I got out of bed, turned on the lights, checked every room. Everything looked normal. Until I noticed my bathroom mirror. There was something written on it. Not in marker, not scratches. Wiped clean, like the words had been traced in condensation and had dried there. It read, "We sang first." I don't know what that means, but it's not the only place I've seen that phrase. I finally got a response from the last person I emailed, someone who had archived old online cult activity in the early 2000s. I'd asked her about sonic lineage, hum protocols, and if she'd heard of any families known for using tonal identification in their practices. Her response was choppy, half redacted, full of hesitation, but one line stood out. Open quote, "The ones you're describing, the Jeffries, the Dunrows, the Babbins, they all trace back to the singing women of Claiborne Ridge. That's where the term originated. We sang first. You're not researching an event, you're circling a recurrence." Close quote. So this wasn't just one family. It was a network, decades old, maybe older, changing names, moving towns, always the same patterns. Large households, off-grid, strict silence training, and eventually someone disappears and someone else starts humming. There's an urban legend out of Tennessee I'd never heard before. The Quiet Hollow Disappearances, 1951. A cluster of missing children, all from extended families ages 6-13. No witnesses, no suspects. Just a strange acoustic anomaly recorded on a tape left behind in one child's room, a blend of soft voices overlaid into one harmonious drone. They called it the child chord. And guess what phrase shows up in the original police notes? 12 less 2. That number again. It keeps showing up. 12 residents, 12 tones, 12 rooms, 2 missing. I tried mapping them out. The tones, each room file has a specific audio signature. With some tuning, you can convert them into notes, actual musical notes. Not all Western scale, some microtonal, but arranged right, they form a circle, an incomplete one, 10 tones. Room 11 and room 12 are corrupted, static-filled, almost silent. That's when it hit me. What if the rooms weren't assigned to people? What if the people were created for the rooms? Each tone, a role. Each bed, a station. Each child, a key. And when the last two were lost, when the harmony fell out of sync, the system collapsed. The house caught fire. The town covered it up. And the hum didn't stop. It scattered. The girl in the video, the one tied to the chair in room 12, she wasn't a victim. She was a conductor. And she's still trying to finish the song. I've started dreaming about her. I say dreaming, but it's more like receiving. No narrative, just sensations. Cold stone floors, long hallways lined with cots. Children walking in single file, silent, mouths sewn or wired or simply closed because that's all they've ever known. And always, always that hum. It doesn't come from any one of them. It comes from beneath them, like the earth is breathing through their throats. This morning I woke up with my laptop open. A new audio file was playing. I didn't open it. It was labeled Room 13 Return. I paused it, didn't delete it, didn't play it. Just stared at the waveform. It's different. Longer. Sharper. It has something under the surface. A reversed voice track? A chorus? I don't know yet. But I know this. If there's a Room 13, there's a 13th child. Someone no one counted, or someone who came after. And if that's true, the system's not dead. It's waking up. I opened the envelope again, the one with the Polaroid. Under the photo, I'd missed it before. There was something else folded tightly. A torn-out index card, yellowed with age, creased down the middle. One line in perfect typewriter font. To become silence, you must first speak her name. And just under that, do not speak her name. I didn't sleep that night. I don't think I was supposed to, because at 3:12 a.m., the mirror fogged again, and this time it didn't say, "We sang first." It said, "Almost ready." Do you remember when I said silence was worse than screaming? I want to revise that. The worst sound is not silence. It's something trying to hide inside silence. Something curling up inside quiet like a parasite, waiting until you're alone and drowsy and letting your guard down just enough to hear it without noticing. And the moment you do notice, that's when you can never unhear it again. Room 13 wasn't on any of the original documents. No floor plans, no photographs, no birth records, no audio logs. But the file was there, labeled, time-stamped, and active. It was the first file that played itself. I spent 3 hours trying to open it in a sound editor. Each time the waveform shifted. It never displayed the same shape twice, like it was reacting to me, testing which frequencies I was most sensitive to. Finally, I set it on a loop and just listened, for hours. At first, it was just the hum. Then other things started to surface. There was a soft clicking sound, rhythmic, like fingernails tapping on wood. A girl's voice counting, then repeating herself, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, over and over, like she couldn't quite make it to 4. Then a second voice, older, distorted. It whispered, "She left the circle." It wasn't clear if he was angry or afraid. I heard myself breathe. That's when I realized my mic was off. I wasn't recording, but my breath was still there. It had been recorded already. I slammed the laptop shut, full body shiver, the kind that starts in your lower spine and makes you want to peel out of your own skin. I checked the file again. Its name had changed. It now read, Room 13, complete. I don't know what that means, but I have a theory. The 13th child wasn't one of the missing. She was the first, the prototype, the seed tone, the reason the others were created in the first place. And she's not gone. She's listening. There's a piece of missing footage in the Jeffries archive, one I found in a university backup under the name Blue Loop. It's only 8 seconds long. But those 8 seconds are pure dread. A girl sits in front of an old reel-to-reel machine. She's maybe 10. Long hair, eyes closed. Her mouth is stitched, not crudely but delicately, like someone practiced embroidery with her lips. Behind her, 12 chairs face inward, empty. As the film flickers, one of the chairs moves slightly. No one is there, but it rocks, back and forth, and then she opens her eyes. Just for a second. They are not human, not animal either. Just wrong. Like they were drawn by someone who didn't understand how eyes work. No pupils, just whorls of color spiraling inward. The reel cuts out before she blinks. The audio in that clip, it matches the bass frequency of Room 13. I cross-referenced the sound signature with every public dataset I could find. NASA audio archives, oceanic recordings, seismic data, even whale song. One match. A field recording from 1983 made in the caves of Naracoorte, Australia. It was dismissed as corrupted, but its frequency curve is identical to Room 13. Here's the thing. Those caves, they were used by early Aboriginal communities for ceremonial silence rituals, and local legend speaks of the child that echoes without being born. Tell me that doesn't sound familiar. Now let me bring it closer to home. I looked up property records for the Jeffries land. Turns out the family didn't own it. It was part of a trust, the Claiborne Ridge Educational Foundation for Harmonic Research, founded 1912, disbanded 2001. Their motto? Open quote, "What was begun must be remembered. What was remembered must be sung." Close quote. And their final filing before closure, disposition of Room 13 unhoused. So it's real. Not just a metaphor or a file or a frequency, a place, one that was moved or never had a fixed location to begin with. I think it's what the town tried to burn. But you can't burn a tone. You can't unmake a harmony that was built into the walls. You can only cover it up. And when it slips out, when somewhere starts humming just right, it finds a new voice. I've been talking in my sleep. I don't remember it, but the recorder does. Last night I said something that chilled me more than anything else. I said, "The chair is ready." I live alone. I've never owned a rocking chair, but one appeared in my hallway this morning, old, wooden, hand-carved with spiral motifs and musical notes etched into the back. No note, no delivery record. It just was. I haven't touched it, not yet, but I've started hearing the counting again. 1, 2, 3, 1. And the mirror, it says something new now. Just 3 letters, yes. I don't know what I agreed to, but I think the 13th child is here, and she's waiting for her story to finish. When I was a teenager, I broke into an old church with some friends. We thought we were edgy, lighting candles, pretending to summon ghosts, whispering into the confessional. At some point, someone knocked 3 times on the inside of the sacristy door. We ran like hell. Thing is, we never opened that door. That memory came back to me today for no reason, except now I think it wasn't the church that was haunted. It was me. The rocking chair moved last night. I didn't touch it. I didn't even look directly at it. But when I walked into the hallway this morning, it had turned to face my bedroom. I don't even have to explain what that means. You feel it, right? That sick little ripple in your spine, like someone humming just below your hearing range. The mirror, yeah, still fogging, still at 3:12 a.m., like it's the only time on the clock that matters. This time it said, "Sing her name." I won't. I won't. But it's getting harder not to, especially when I started getting emails I never subscribed to. Newsletters, research logs, audio analysis updates from forums I've never visited, all with one subject line: reunion pending. Inside, random musical notations, fragments of lyrics, photos of empty chairs, a recurring image of a girl with her back turned standing in a forest clearing surrounded by old CRT televisions. Each screen shows the same phrase, open quote, "You've heard her already," close quote. I thought maybe I was being trolled. Maybe this whole thing was some elaborate ARG, but there's no pattern, no source code, no traceable IPs. And then one email had a video attached, just 10 seconds. A child's birthday party, ordinary at first, balloons, cake, singing, until you realize the happy birthday melody is wrong, not off-key, deliberately different, harmonic in a way that sends goosebumps down your forearms. And when the camera pans across the table, every child is mouth closed. The singing isn't coming from them. It's beneath the table. I paused the video and ran a frequency split. Guess what? Same tones. Rooms 1 through 10, just like the recordings from the Jeffries house, but it gets worse. The 13th frequency, the one missing from every other file, it's present in this video. Not loud, just waiting, almost like it knew someone would finally listen. I reached out to one of the parents from the Quiet Hollow disappearances, the 1951 case I told you about. Yes, they're still alive. She's 92, lives in a care home. When I told her what I was researching, she said nothing. Then she started humming, low and sweet, a tone so pure it made my teeth ache. When she stopped, she whispered, open quote, "The child came from inside the earth. She was the 13th, but we sang 12 notes. One had to be silence." Close quote. Then she cried and wouldn't speak again. I left. But I took something with me, a phrase she wrote on a napkin before I left, where there is a 13th note, silence cannot hide. What does that mean? Maybe this. Silence isn't the absence of sound. It's a placeholder for something you're not ready to hear. So I did the thing I swore I wouldn't do. I played Room 13, start to finish, headphones, full volume. I wish I could explain it, but I can't. Not really. It wasn't music, not even a tone. It was space. Like the inside of a cathedral underwater, like someone humming a lullaby inside your bones. And right at the center, a voice. Clear as day. It said, "You've come far. Take your seat." And then a second voice, the girl's voice from the tapes. "Now we begin again." I passed out. I know that sounds dramatic, but I'm not lying. When I woke up, the laptop was gone. Just gone. But the rocking chair, it had moved again. Now it was in the living room facing the front door. On the seat, a cassette tape. No label, just a Sharpie mark that read, "Play me last." I haven't played it, not yet. But I know this now. The 13th child is not a single person. She is a pattern, a recurrence, a harmonic loop. She appears when the chord is rebuilt, when enough voices come together, even unknowingly she awakens. And when she awakens, rooms fill. 12 bodies, 12 sounds, one silence. That silence is her. And when she speaks, it means the system is ready again. Tonight I heard a knock on my door. Not a loud one, just 3 soft taps, like the sacristy door. I didn't open it, but I know what's on the other side. A chair. A girl. A new note. The beginning of the next arrangement. 3 knocks again last night. Always 3. And always at the same time. 3:12 a.m. You know what I did? I sat in the rocking chair. I don't even remember moving. I just was there. Wrapped in a blanket I don't own. Listening to wind that wasn't coming from outside. It smelled like rain and cedarwood. Exactly like the Jeffries basement used to smell. But my house doesn't have a basement. It took me a second to realize. The mirror in the hallway, the one that had been fogging for weeks, was clear. And something was written in sharp, childlike handwriting. "Look behind you." I didn't. Couldn't. I couldn't. You know when your whole body tenses, like your muscles are trying to hold your soul inside your skin? That's how it felt. Like if I turned around, I'd never stop seeing what was behind me. Instead, I whispered, open quote, "What do you want?" Close quote. And the mirror fogged instantly. Words appeared. "You already said yes." Then the cassette tape in my pocket, my pocket started to feel warm. I don't even remember putting it there. But I finally played it, and I wish I could unhear what was on it. The tape began with silence. 30 full seconds of complete, perfect nothing. Then came breathing. Slow, soft, a child's, a little hiccup in the rhythm, like they were trying not to cry. Then humming. The same melody from Room 13, but this time there were words. In a tiny voice, barely above a whisper. Open quote, "She sits in the echo. She waits in the chord she's never forgotten, just never explored." Close quote. The humming stopped. Another voice came in, mine. Not me now, but me as a child. I said, open quote, "I hear the chair again." Close quote. And then footsteps, not walking, not running, creeping, as if someone were barefoot, pacing on old wooden floors. The last thing on the tape? Laughter. Not evil laughter, not maniacal or gleeful, just lonely, tired. Like someone who had waited a long time to be found and wasn't sure they wanted to be found anymore. And finally, a whisper. She is always born into the biggest family. I shut it off. I went to the fridge, just trying to break the feeling, ground myself in reality. Inside, 12 eggs, but when I touched one, it rolled back, like something shifted underneath the carton. I lifted it. A note was taped to the bottom, open quote, "There are 12 known. One is not counted. One keeps watch." Close quote. There it was again, the unspoken 13th. I started making calls again. Desperate ones. Do you remember the brother of Paul Jeffries? The one who disappeared before they moved into that house? His name was Caleb. I found someone claiming to be him, lives in Maine, off-grid, responded to an old message board post from 2016 that I'd forgotten I even wrote. He said, open quote, "Don't look for her in the past. She always arrives second, not behind you, inside you," close quote. I asked him what happened to his family. He replied, open quote, "We made a pact, 12 of us. We thought if we stopped singing, she'd stay asleep, but she never sleeps. She listens. That's how she chooses," close quote. And then his final message, open quote, "If the chair moves again, you're the next house," close quote. That's why I haven't slept. I've kept every light on, every sound machine running. I haven't let silence take hold for more than a few seconds, but last night during a power blink, I heard it, the harmony, 12 distinct notes, each one soft, almost tender, and a 13th, not louder, just final, like punctuation, like closing a circle. The chair had turned again, not facing the front door now, but facing inward, to me, as if I'm the last seat, as if the arrangement is complete. This morning I checked the mirror again. No message, just my reflection. Except I was humming, not really, not out loud. My lips weren't moving, but I could hear it, a soft hum, perfect pitch, like the girl's melody had taken root in my chest. I tried to speak, but only air came out. Not breath, just tone, like a tuning fork had been buried in my throat. Now I can't tell if I'm speaking to you anymore, or if you're listening through her, because let's be honest, you're not just hearing this, you're remembering it, aren't you? Somewhere deep down, something about this sounds familiar, not because you've been here, but because she has. She moves through stories, families, songs, houses, disguised as silence, hidden in chairs, forgotten in lullabies. She finds the biggest family. She waits. And when you listen long enough, you become part of it. And if this sounds like nonsense, like dream logic, that's how she gets in, through the things you don't take seriously, through bedtime stories, through voices like mine. The lights won't stay on anymore. I tried everything, new bulbs, rewiring, even moved to a different room. Doesn't matter. At 3:12 a.m., they always flicker out. That's when the chair begins to rock. I don't even have to look anymore. I feel it. A push forward, a drag back, a sigh in the rhythm of wood on wood. I haven't said anything aloud in 2 days because I'm afraid the sound of my voice will answer her, that it'll complete the chord. You know what I realized? My house has 12 rooms. I never noticed before. I thought it was 11. The hallway counts as 1. So does the attic. The bathroom under the stairs that no one uses, that's the 12th. And I just found a 13th. Behind the closet in the guest room, beneath layers of drywall, an empty crawl space, small, silent, untouched, except for a chair, identical to mine, facing the wall, and on the floor, a spiral drawn in chalk, crude, childlike, but intentional. Inside the spiral, sit for the silence. I left the house after that, booked a hotel 2 towns over, but she followed. The mirror in the hotel bathroom fogged the second I stepped in. 3:12 a.m. This time, the message was different. You're last. That's when it clicked. It's not about finding her. It's not even about understanding. It's about finishing. See, every time the 13th appears, it's because someone is trying to explain her, trying to pull apart the pattern. That's what makes the music start again. We try to record it, to name it, to give it form, and that is the form. She only exists when we try to prove she does. So the 12 disappear, one by one, until only the 13th remains. And that 13th, they tell the story, just like I'm doing now. And I don't know if you're still listening because you're curious or because you've started humming along. Check. Right now. Is your foot tapping? Is your throat tight? Is your mirror fogged? Be honest. I went home one last time today. Everything was exactly where I left it, except the chair. It had been moved. Not in the hallway, not in the living room. It was in my bedroom, facing the bed, and in the seat, a single object, a recorder, already playing. It whispered, open quote, we only need one to remember. That's how we begin again. Close quote. I picked it up, I pressed stop, and when I turned around, the mirror was clear. My reflection, smiling. But I wasn't. I reached toward the glass and tapped it 3 times just to see what would happen, and I swear to you, something tapped back. I don't know how long I'll stay awake tonight, but if this is my last entry, then hear me. There's no curse, no demon, no haunting. There's only the melody, and the melody needs an audience. 12 go missing, 1 remains. That one becomes the next storyteller, and that story always starts the same way. Like this. Some disappearances are accompanied by screaming. Others, silence. And silence is worse. Now you've heard it, you can't unhear it. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you really like what I'm doing here. Let me know your location and local time in the comments. And if you're still with me, now turn off the lights, maybe turn on the fan for some soothing noise, and let's get started tonight. If you've made it this far, it's probably quiet where you are. That's good. That's where stories like this belong, in the hush between heartbeat and breath, between what we know and what we almost remember. Let this final moment be soft. Imagine the room around you, the familiar shapes, the way your blanket folds like memory, the hum of the fan, the hush of traffic outside. Let them all become part of the melody. You're not in danger. You're not cursed. You're simply a listener now, like others before you, like others who may never be counted in the stories. This tale, like all good lullabies, doesn't truly end. It only fades like breath on a mirror, like chalk beneath rain, like a note held just a little too long. If you hear her, if the 13th note finds you, just know that it means your house has harmony, that you've been invited into the arrangement, and that maybe, somewhere, another rocker has finally come to rest. So close your eyes. Don't fight the silence. Let the last hum carry you. And when you wake, don't look behind the mirror. Some things sound better when they're forgotten. Open quote, open quote, open quote. End of script. Good night. Close quote. Close quote. Close quote.